right. Well, thanks for the intro. One of the other things about Huntsville AI, as actually I had this up for a while, we can flip over. We're normally running things fairly loosely. These are not run as a lecture series or anything like that. It's much more of a working group. So if you are one of the types that likes to tinker or put things together or break things, in interesting ways, this is kind of what we're for. With that, I will hop back over. We actually, a little more on that. We started back in 2018. So we are right around 8 years of time into that. So this was a little before all of the hype started, all that kind of stuff. Started off working data science, and then kind of moving into the AI realm. Mostly pure, almost strictly AI, but we do jump back into data science because a lot of things are, it's all statistics under the covers. So with that, let me get back into the thing. So the agenda for today is to go through a few slides just to get a common understanding of when I say AI agent, what am I talking about? What are most people talking about? And then I'll note a couple of places where there's still, I'm not one to argue over the finer points of what is and is not an agent, you know, some things like that, but some are. So I'll note a couple of places where you may come out of here saying, hey, this is an agent. Somebody might say, no, it's not. It doesn't have memory. Like, okay, great. So yeah, with that, a little about me. I got a lot of titles. Didn't even put all of them on here. I'm the CTO at Cohesion Force. I've been there since 2011. The current program I support is called MaskF. I have been working that particular product since 2011, so they call me the chief archaeologist there because I know where things are buried. Chief instigator is probably because I do things like this and try to get some kind of movement going in a particular direction. I've been working AI since about 2005 at Florida Tech, doing NLP systems for recommending web forum channels. Actually, we didn't have web forums at the time. This was all mailing list, news groups type things. Like that. The bottom line is why I do this. The best way to ensure that AI is used for the greater good is to involve the greatest number of perspectives possible in its development, testing, and use. It's a big statement, but we've seen problem after problem after problem in AI where one group of people built something and it worked great for them, and they had no clue that it didn't work for people that weren't in their same kind of either culture or economic background or racial profile or whatever. And it gets really, really interesting. So the more people work with this and test this and use this, the better we're going to be able to find the edge cases or the places where, hey, I know you said this thing works, but it doesn't work for me. So that's part of why we do Huntsville AI. So a little bit of setup. So we'll take some time talking about what an agent is, some background info. There is a GitHub repository we'll be using. Quick show of hands, who here has cloned something from GitHub before? Okay, good deal. Who here has used Python before? All right, okay, good deal. So we've got some basic Python classes for examples, and then Jupyter notebooks for those that don't have access to a full-up development environment. One of the things I've learned with helping at hackathons, we've done Space Apps Challenge going back while they had it here a good ways, Hudson Alpha Tech Challenge, a couple of different, one at UAH and then one at Bob Jones High School actually had a hackathon we kind of helped with once. That was fun, but we found that throwing things up into a Google Colab kind of a notebook makes it so that everybody can play along, even if you don't have a, you know, some kind of a laptop to use. So we'll be working with that. At some point, the other thing I'll mention is the goal for today is to get your hands dirty with an agent. or building an agent or watching somebody build an agent, things like that. One of the other items we're going to do is that I have loaded up a token. We use a thing called Open Router. I'll explain a little bit what that is. You've probably been hearing a lot about Claude or about OpenAI or about Gemini, Google system, things like that. There's a product called Open Router that you can use where you have an account with Open Router, and then from there it can go to any of these other kinds of models that you want to pull in. That keeps me from having to have running accounts that I have to track and do all that kind of stuff. The other thing is that the two of the rules we always talk about at Huntsville AI. One of them we're going to slightly break today, but it's okay because I'm following rule number 1. Anytime you create an account with either AWS or OpenAI or whatever, put a budget on that account. Put a do not exceed blah, 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 and when you get started, make it a low number. So this morning I created a token. I put $20 on it. So we have $20 to use today. And we'll one of the reasons I did that is so that occasionally we'll pull up the screen and show you what we've burned so far. I want you to get an idea of how much this stuff actually costs to do some things that we're going to do. It's not, hence the $20. It's not super expensive for some of the things. The other rule is don't check in your keys to GitHub or any Git repo. I guarantee you there are things out there scraping the entirety of GitHub right now, and as soon as you check in a key, somebody is using it. So that $20 would disappear pretty quick. So with that, we've got, at some point later, you will see Jack's email pop up. Jack has the keys, and if you're playing along and you want to run this yourself, the way this is going to work, because we kind of planned this out about 5 minutes ago, is that you send Jack an email. Jack will reply with the keys that you need to use. It's a file that you can copy right into your .env file, source that, and you're ready to go. Or if you're following along on Google Colab, I can show you where to put those keys as well. So for that, quick question. How many types of human agents can you list in 30 seconds? I don't have a timer. I'll start off. Travel agent.
Booking agent.
Booking agent. Insurance agent. Real estate agent.
Special agent.
Special agent. Ha!
Administrative assistant.
Administrative assistant.
Air traffic control.
Air traffic control. Meteorologist. Okay. All right, these are all, what is the primary function of an agent? I mean, we're talking about a personal agent. If I have an insurance agent, what is the function of that agent? To do something on my behalf. So it could be, and you've got different levels of how much authority I give these agents to do things. In other words, I may have a travel agent that can go find flights but not book them. I may have an administrative assistant that can find open spaces in my calendar and set things up but not actually send the invite yet. It depends. If I've got, there was a time in my life where I did a lot of travel for the company I worked for, and our admin assistant kept me alive most of the time. And it was, she was allowed to book any flight she thought was best for me. I trusted her at that level. Her name was Audrey. And the only thing was I needed to know which flight I'm supposed to be on because I'd be on the way to the airport and I'd say, hey, this got canceled. We got you on this other one. You're now going to Fort Hood instead of Fort Bliss, blah, 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 and it's fine. So you got different levels of authority that you can give these things. Each level, increasing level of authority, sorry, it's still early for my use of words, comes with a level of risk that you have to figure out how you're going to mitigate that level of risk. Again, it's one of the things we talk about sometimes when we're talking about AI in general, again, with the more perspectives and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes when things go wrong, it's not a big deal. You know, let's say you're talking about AI and it's used in the recommendation system used by Netflix to show you the next movie you might want to watch. If they show you a movie that they think you want to watch and you go, no, I don't like that one, how much did it cost them? Not much. What impact was it to you? Not much, you know. If you are doing something like Stitch Fix, where you actually sign up for an stylist who is probably a real person, I'm not sure if that's an agent now or not, they pack up a bunch of clothes they think will fit you, they think you'll like and all, and they ship this to you. And then if you don't like it, you ship it back, okay? What impact was there? $20, yes. And then your time as a consumer, you know, things like that. Let's say we're trying to get onto Redstone Arsenal and you're going through the AI-based facial recognition lane. And let's say that does not work for you. What is the impact? It's different. You might miss a meeting that you're trying to get to. You know, I'm just trying to get into the levels of impact make a pretty big difference here. So that's some of the things you'll have to look into if you're looking at building these things and rolling them out as a company or for your organization or even personally. You need to look and see, is this something that I want to, you know, go find information and come back and tell me? Or is this something where I want it to find a flight and book the flight? I'm going to give this thing my credit card. Yeah, I mean, there's things like that. So, definition of an AI agent. I stole this blatantly from Hugging Face because they have some of the best, they've got a really good course that is very approachable if you've never done agent stuff before. It's free, it's online, you can Google it and find it. It's actually what we based our first discussion last year on AI agents. So it's a system that leverages an AI model to interact with its environment to achieve a user-defined objective. And that goes back to what you're saying, it's to achieve an objective. It combines reasoning, planning, and the execution of actions, often via external tools to fulfill a task. Some people that are very, very precise on their definitions of things would tell you that an agent has to use a tool or might use a tool or doesn't have to. I don't have memory on here. Some people's definition of an agent includes some kind of memory that it has going forward. Because as you can imagine working with a travel agent that couldn't remember what you told it last time, you know, that would be really, really probably annoying. So here is my pure AI generated, thank you Gemini. I sent it my first slide and said make this better because it's got a little icon in my Google Slides now that says, would you like to make this, what is it, beautiful or more, beautify? I'm like, that's not a word I use, but okay, so I click the button. And it's actually correct. On the left, you've got a loop for plan, perceive, act, and reflect. I've seen different words used there, but it's basically a loop that goes around. So the fun thing here is when I started working with AI back in 2005-ish, the going thing at the time was this concept of intelligent agents. It's weird. We didn't even have a thing called an LLM. This was all about observing the things in your environment. You had some way of activating things, think maybe robotic kind of things. I can either turn or I can move or I can affect my environment, and then I can turn back around and sense the new environment. In other words, if I'm tracking where I'm moving, I take a sense and I know where I'm at, and I roll forward for 2 meters, and then I take another sense of where I'm at, and you can work that way. So it's kind of interesting to see the core loop all the way back in. And then autonomy. This is where you're going to give this thing some amount of flexibility is the way I would put it. When you get into, the other statement I make a lot is there's a reason it's called prompting and not instructing. You are prompting this agent to do something, and then pretty please do what I'm asking. And then use the tools that I give you, and then give me these results. Sometimes, again, being flexible, you can imagine how many different ways this thing could I don't want to say go wrong, but it could do things that you weren't intending. And then also key components up here, this AI decided to put memory and tools in here. So that's fine. I'm guessing it's right. Google, we're almost back to where if Google said it, then it's true. There's that. So a different kind of a question. What's the difference between agents and just automating things? There was a lot. Yeah. Okay. Now, I mean, this is purely, I mean, if you got thoughts, throw them out. This is normally the way we roll. So if you've, a lot of people are doing something and they will call it agentic, and then you look into it and it's like, you could have wrote that in a Perl script. I don't know why this is a new a thing. Similar to a lot of AI techniques that probably could be just linear regression, but we had to go build a whole new model to do a thing. It's a thing. So traditional automation, fixed logic, you were doing step 1 through step 10, things like that. It fails when the environment or task deviates from your expected path. It's really hard to pick up edge cases. API changes, or one of the things you'll see later, if you've ever built something that tries to scrape a website or pull information from something else, what happens when they change their CSS? What happens when they change the way things are written? What happens, if you're doing something with Excel, what happens when they change their formulas or their macros or whatever? It's one of the places where automation is hard. So no reasoning. It does what it's told. And then it's also best for things that if you're doing this over and over and over again and your interfaces aren't going to change that much, or if they do, you know about it beforehand, this might actually be best. If I don't know that you want to go roll an AI agent to go do, some of the things we're even going to do this morning could just be an automated task. But it's more to get your foot in the door and kind of see where this could go. The agent itself has more of a dynamic aspect to it. So you can give it a goal and actually have it break down the tasks that it needs to follow to meet its goal. It can pick between tools that you give it. If you give it a tool to look at a calendar versus a tool to look at your email, you may have. So when I accept a meeting, it winds up in both on my calendar and in my inbox because there was some email traffic that goes by. So I could write something purely based on my email that also knows what my schedule is, just based on what I've accepted and the email traffic going by. So sometimes you can give an agent multiple tools, and it can actually choose which tool is best that it thinks to fulfill that job. It's also one of the more annoying things that an agent can do when you're trying to get it to use the tool that you want it to use. Sometimes it can say, no, I think I like this one better. There are ways that you can prompt it to try to keep that from happening, and we'll get into some of that in a minute. Also reasoning based, as in, hey, I'm going to break this task down into smaller pieces as I see fit, and keep working. Some of the tools that you wind up using, if you've ever done something called deep research with some of these tools, or some other types of approaches, or some of the other tools do something similar, they will actually go build the plan that they plan to execute and then present that back to you for you to modify. And you can remove some sections or say, no, really, I want you to go look at this website, not that one, things like that. In this case, we're looking at trying to do this in a purely automated fashion. As in, I give an agent a job, the agent goes and does the job, please don't ask me for more information. You can set up a step that actually has more of a feedback loop so that if there are clarifying questions that need to get asked, they can come back to you. In our case, we're not headed that direction. Best for complex, non-standard, or changing tasks. I use the heck out of this stuff for market research, for looking at things that are changing or dynamic. One of the things we'll do later is actually going and pulling information from a website, and the website is, I hope nobody here wrote it or works with it, but anyway, if not, it's not great. So has anybody done SIBR's topics or STTR SITR's topics or anything like that? I know you have, Phil, but okay. The website that you go to that gives a list of topics with 3 scroll bars, and then you got to click the thing to see what's in it and all that kind of stuff. It's nearly impossible to scrape because it is all dynamic. You know, it doesn't show you the next thing until you click through the things. We'll actually work with that some and show you what it takes to just write an agent that can go click through it as if it were you. So that's kind of what this stuff is good for. So if they happen to go change that website, I don't really care. I've got an agent that's smart enough to know what a topic is and to know what phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 are and how to go grab that information and pull it back regardless of how they format the thing. One of the reasons we do Huntsville AI is because stuff happens extremely fast. So everybody remembers probably when ChatGPT came out. I mean, this was late 2022, you know, and then within roughly a 5 to 6 month time frame in 2023, this was January to May, you had Chain of Thought pop out. I mean, it was a giant paper that changed the way we look at things. Large language models are zero-shot reasoners. Let's verify step by step. Tool use for you know, models that can actually use tools. The whole loop that I was showing earlier, there was a whole paper on that called React. The other cool thing about AI in general is that most papers written for AI, you know, that kind of thing, are out there and fully public. You don't have to go sign up for IEEE or ACM or go to the library to get through some kind of a paywall. They're nearly all out there, you know, like that. So 2023 was kind of one of the moments that got the thing cranked up. People started playing with things. The chain of thought was really interesting where you could say, hey, I want you to do this and think through this step by step and explain what you're doing as you go. You could still do that if you go ask ChatGPT something. Just normally, most of these do it automatically already because it actually helps you have some level of trust in what it's doing. I won't tell you that what it's saying that it's thinking may not actually be what it's thinking. It may be telling you what it thinks you want to hear. Anyway, that's AI for you. So that was fun. The initial tool use. This was where you would prompt a model and then you would explain what the tool is in your prompt. As in, like, you could have like a little snippet of Python code in your prompt and say, here's a tool, I want you to do it like this. And then it wasn't actually going and calling a thing. It knew what the tool was supposed to do, and it would like incorporate that into how it was going to work. So it was really, really hard to debug. And again, back to prompting, you would have to put a description of what your tool was and pretty please use this tool to do this thing. So there were also some underlying protocols that came about because this was Wild West. And everybody was going every which way. And then somebody came out with, who did MCP? Anthropic, okay. Anthropic dropped MCP, and it made sense, and everybody just jumped on it. So it's fairly straightforward. There are boatloads of MCP-based tools out there that you can just pull in and use. Some of them cost money depending on what you're looking at doing. Some of them are actually free, and then you've got, you know, so things like ChatGPT, or one we're going to use today is an MCP server provided by GitHub itself. So it's hosted on GitHub, and you can use it. So there has been somewhat of a change. I'm not sure how far back this goes. Where people have been moving kind of away from MCP to some extent. If I don't, I need to figure out when. I don't think I have context built into this. I might. Yes, I do, towards the end. So remind me when we get to context engineering to talk about MCP, if you don't mind. So this is a protocol that tells agents how it can use tools. Really useful. I don't have to go put stuff in my prompt and hope this model understands how to do this. So you can see kind of how it works. You've got flows back and forth. There are hundreds and hundreds of MCP based tools out there, to the point where it'll make your head spin. There are some that, like I was looking this morning to try to find a tool, an MCP for GitHub that didn't require a token to use. Because GitHub is, I mean, you should be able to do the thing on the free website just without having to, I shouldn't have to log in to see public stuff, not free stuff. So I went and looked, and there are probably 8 to 9 different GitHub MCP servers. There's one official and about 8 or 9 unofficial that people have built over time. All of them require a token, though, so I wound up having to stick with what I have. Just to get you an idea of that. A different protocol, we're not going to go too far into this because this is more building a single agent. You can have agents that work with other agents. Several of you, I believe, saw, let's see, who was in Brian's keynote yesterday morning, first thing? Most of you, okay. He had an agent called Diane. He had 3 or 4 agents to do things. Those were mostly ones that he orchestrates and he is working with. I've seen his N8N kind of a thing, so I know he's got more than that. But if you were at the Skyfire presentation yesterday, you also saw something where they had something set up where they had one agent looking at airspace, one agent looking at weather, one agent looking at radio traffic, one agent looking at, a lot of different things. And to do that, you actually have to have a way for these agents to communicate with each other. Unless you want to be the switchboard of, oh my gosh, because these things can run a whole lot faster than we can. Another piece on that, anyone have, let's see, my wife is a preschool teacher, so I'm gonna base it on what I know from that. Anyone have preschool age kids? Or have had preschool age kids? We can just go that route. So if you've got Johnny and you tell him to grab your backpack, put your shoes on, comb your hair, get in the car. You just told him 4 things to do. How many of those 4 is he actually going to do? 0. The last one, if you're lucky. So agents, I'm not a pure statement, but think of it the same way. If you give these things too much to do, it's not only that it may wind up, missing something or whatever, it's going to be really, really hard to figure out what went wrong later. If you're in the middle of this trying to debug this thing, it's up to you now. Where if you had segmented these things kind of like what Skyfire did into each one being a smaller piece, you can test them separately now. You can operate on, you can mix and match what you want to do, like that. So those are some protocols. We'll walk through quickly a couple of the frameworks that you can use. Again, there are a lot of things open. I tried to put a kind of a description for each. Each one of these may be better, suited to different personal preferences or how you like to interact with things. OpenAI has their ecosystem. I think they call it Agent Kit. It's a mix between like writing some code for things, but there's also a good bit of being able to just drag and drop things on a big graph and hook things up using predefined tools and then deploying those. Again, you're going to find most of what OpenAI provides. Would love to go back and work with an OpenAI model. So there's a little bit of that. Pydantic, this is the one that we're using, or I'm using today. So this is a Pydantic, initially was just a Python kind of a library to help a lot with some of the problems around Python being an interpreted language, type safety, things like that. So Pydantic is one of the primary ways to check things before you run and to kind of provide more of a framework to give you a little more structure. They've also got an AI approach that is similar in that mode. One of the differences here is that we can actually define the structure that we would like to receive our information back from our agent. So otherwise, it's a bunch of string data. I mean, you could get it JSON formatted, you could get it YAML formatted, you could get it XML if you want. If you had some weird structure that you want your data back, it can provide it. But in this case, we're going to actually define the structures in Python classes and say, hey, I'm going to call this method, and I want you to take the information you get and put it back into this structure. Give it to me. You can imagine how much easier that is to work with from a development perspective on chaining a bunch of things together. So that's the one we're working with today, but also LangChain. This goes back, predates a lot of the others. LangChain was something coming along when NLP and some of your LLMs were kind of gaining traction. Being able to tie a lot of things together. This was a little right around the Gen AI kind of stuff coming out. So LangChain, it's great, and it's all free. And then if you start getting into LangGraph, which is where you tie all the things together, and then you turn around and they've got this LangSmith thing, because it's got to have Lang in front of everything. And then eventually you wind up on their paid service to host your thing. So they've got a lot of good documentation, though. Hugging Face, again, this was our first entry point into agents, just getting our feet wet, playing around with them. There's a course that's provided. I was maybe halfway through a presentation and ran out of free tokens to use on their, and it wasn't fun. But there's some things they've changed since then to actually let you use whatever inference server that you would like to use. So I'm actually going to go backward for a minute. Sorry. Back to here. So one of the things that I didn't mention is you've got in an AI agent, the main part is this LLM piece in the middle. Where it's the thing that's going to do the reasoning for you. You'll see that certain types of LLMs, if you're looking through their model cards and things like that, you'll see some that have reasoning, some that don't have reasoning. You'll see some that can do tools, some that can't do tools. I'm not sure how many don't do tools anymore, but at the time this was all coming out, you'd be doing great, and all of a sudden you'd get all these kinds of errors, and then you'd figure out, oh, this model doesn't do tool use. Shoot. Okay, let me find another one, because there's only like 8 million of them to pick from. So that was one of the keys there. Let me jump forward to prompt engineering. Anyone done, Jack, I think yours was more on prompt engineering, wasn't it? I am not great at prompt engineering. If you want to know how good you are at prompt engineering, write an agent. And then figure out how, because your prompt is the thing telling the agent, and you've got two different levels of prompts we'll get into. One of them is a system prompt that lays out the kind of the arena that the agent is going to work in, what its rule set is, what its goal in life is. That's where you put things in like if you run into an error, what do you do? If you only have partial information to fill out a structure, is that okay or not okay? Is it okay to go back and ask clarifying questions if you were unclear on something? Is it okay to use tools that aren't in the list that I give you? There's a lot, a ton of information in here. We'll walk through some of the system prompts that I'm using on the agents that we're looking at today. If you were to go, some of these have been leaked, but if you were to go find the system prompt for one of the big agents like Claude Code, I have no idea how many lines that thing is. Do you know?
Like 25K tokens or something like that.
25,000 tokens. These things are like giant. Now, to the point where they're more trade secret types. That's why I asked in the attorney with Ryan, can you copyright a prompt? You're like, well, you could copyright it, but then you'd have to show it. And so, yeah, okay, maybe not. So that's kind of like think of that as the recipe to Coca-Cola or KFC or whatever. You know, that's some super, they spend a lot of time working through that. They should be as specific and detailed as possible. You can, I've already covered the errors and incomplete information. Each one of these primary LLM providers like Microsoft or Meta or OpenAI or Google, nearly all of them provide some type of guidance on the best ways to prompt their models. I've got a couple links up here. One is OpenAI, the other is Claude, on their kind of view on the best ways, best practices of things to prompt. You'll find a lot of interesting things out there. There's actually some full-up, I think there's some full-up like college classes now on how to write a prompt. It seems a little odd to me, but it's a thing. And then the other, context engineering. So context, as an agent is working through, it gets your initial request, and then it's going and maybe doing its reasoning and figuring out its steps that it's going to use, and it's calling tool number one and coming back with the result of tool number one. It may actually, maybe it calls tool number one a couple of times to get more information, and then it calls tool number two. You can imagine that if it forget what it was doing every time it, if it started from scratch every time it calls something, you're not going to get a lot of good stuff. So that's the context is what this thing has as it's working through its stages. If you're working with something like Claude Code or Klein or some of the other, some of your development tools will actually show you how much of your context has been used. If you're uploading a document to review, that document goes into the context. It goes to the model. If you load up a SharePoint site worth of documents, because some of these things have gone into the, large. So context size has been increasing over time, and it's, a couple. Well, the other thing I'll say is, when I make a statement like back in the day, that means last year, in AI speak. Back in the day, we were fighting with how much stuff I could put into a context. I couldn't put full-size documents into contexts, so I actually had to break these up into pieces and then build embeddings for each piece and then actually ship that across because we didn't have enough room. I will tell you that context, not all pieces of that context are as useful as other pieces. It seems like they made it so big, and then you get into interesting. There's a lot of papers out on what happens with context over time. You can see some things going on when that context gets close to being full. You can see things like you have an agent that forgets where it is. You may have something get stuck in a loop and keeps trying to do the same thing over and over again, or telling you that it did it when it didn't actually do it. I don't know if anybody's run into that before. Say, yes, I built this for you. And it's like, no, you did not. You have a great description of the thing you did not build in my chat there. But so there's some really good information on how to work with that. Some models out there, or some agents out there now, what you'll see is at some point in time, they'll actually say, hey, I need to compress this context or summarize this context, and it'll take what it's got so far, run it through like a summary part, and then replace the big piece with just the summary parts, which is kind of like, it's more how my brain works, actually. I can't really get into details of discussions I had yesterday even, but I could probably give you some bullet points. It's still a working memory that's useful enough for what I need anyway. So that is all for slides. Any questions or thoughts or things I missed? Because we got a lot of folks in here. I was expecting 40 to give you a clue of this seems to be a pretty hot topic. Yeah, what do y'all think? Yeah.
Well, context engineering, dimension MCP.
Yes.
So did you mentioned, you said it
Oh, the context in here. I'm trying to remember what I was talking about for context. I forgot. Back to the working memory.
lost the context.
Yes, I lost my context. I had some. Oh, MCP. Thank you for that. So back on context. Every time I have to call a tool or get a result from a tool, that information goes into my context. So MCP servers, some of them are quite chatty as far as the description of the tools that are in the kind of like the GitHub MCP server we'll look at later, or we're going to use later. We're not going to go too far into it because we don't have time. You can imagine all the things you can do with GitHub. I've got issues, I've got actual code, I've got pull requests, I've got repositories, I've got users, I've got organizations, so every one of these things has a function that has to be described, and all of that can get put into your context, even if I'm just using one tool. So there's been kind of a, call it context bloat, because every time this thing gets called, you got more information coming across, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So there's been kind of a push to go almost away from MCP back to command line tools. So kind of like bash is all you need type of a thing, where if I can describe how to use the GitHub CLI that I can install on my command line and just have my agent use that instead of having to go back and forth and back and forth. I could explain to my agent, here is the method and the response you're going to get back for this 1 out of 200 calls. I don't need all of that. Think of it as a surface area for that API. I don't need all of that. I really don't care about organizations. I really don't, there's a lot that if I'm trying to do something, I may not, I can really simplify things. So that was the note on that was, appreciate that, by the way. So there's been a move kind of moving away from MCP unless you need it. There's also, I've seen a little bit of a move on kind of breaking MCP into smaller chunks, more along the way of how people are using it. So with that, back to question. You had a question, I think.
So for prompt engineering, one thing I've found helpful is when I'm kind of trying to come up with that system prompt, I plug it into Gemini and say, here's what I'm trying to ask, come up with a good system prompt for me, and it'll pick back very detailed, and then I'll kind of iterate with it to get to that, because I'm horrible at
Okay.
thinking through everything.
Yeah, so for those online later, the question or the statement was a good way to build a system prompt is to actually go ask Gemini or some model, hey, I need a system prompt and here's what I'm looking for. Here's my context. Every system prompt you see in the repo was also generated by Gemini based on what I told it. I'm giving a presentation on AI agents and I've got an agent that is using this, this, and this. And it actually caught some things that I'm not normally aware of. Things more along the lines of, if there was an error, what do you do? Because again, this stuff I'm expecting to get a set of classes back, or a set of instances, or maybe a list of items or something. And you can imagine if I get just a string that says, "Oh, it didn't work." Well, how do you do that? Any other questions, comments? Cries of heresy.
A guy in our office does this, and I don't know if it works, but he almost does a shorthand that it doesn't make sense English-wise. But we were having problems with the size. You know how they compact now. He would write things, and it was just certain keywords. You go, what is this gibberish? Well, if I make it too long, it eats up my context. And all. Have you heard of that? Or?
Yes. There's another thing that's I'll bring up. The LLMs work on terms of tokens. You'll hear input tokens, output tokens. They charge you money based on how many input tokens and output tokens, and it's a fun thing. It's a different price for input tokens than it is for output tokens. To make it even more interesting, most of the time when you're loading things up with like OpenRouter, you'll see things in terms of credits. So you've got tokens, and then I'm trying to figure out how many credits match up with a token, and I swear it's almost like it's magic, and it's kind of hard to track sometimes. One thing, I don't know if I've got a description of it in the code. As the model is going back and forth with these tools, you can actually dump part of that context out and see what tool was called, all that kind of stuff. You can see how many tokens went through. If you're dealing with some of the APIs directly, like if I had this connected directly with Anthropic, I could see how much my charge was so far. So you can imagine if you could give an AI agent an actual budget and say, go do your best, but don't spend more than $5, you know? So one of the things he was probably trying to do was reduce how many tokens actually have to go through there. The models that you're using sometimes can be, one of the things we always had to do was, and I think I've got it in one of my system prompts, please don't add extra words to explain this. You know, put it in the structure, give me the structure. I already know I know enough to build a structure that you're using. I don't need you to tell me what the structure was that I have built for you, you know. So some of these models can get quite chatty. I don't know if you've ever done anything with Gemini or Claude or anything where you ask the question and it's just a bunch of it's spewing information and it's like would you please get to the point, you know, and it's over and over and when it's done, yes, usually it'll give you a summary, but if I could just jump straight to that, in the case if I'm paying for the output tokens, it matters, especially if you're connecting a lot of these up, throwing them out in the system, and hoping for the best. The other thing is if you actually, when people talk to each other, depending on the context that I know you have, I can short circuit a whole lot of words. You know, if we work, and you'll see this around the workplace, you'll see this in certain domains where you can either use short codes or something where if I knew that you were NASA, I could, you know, there's a whole set of things that I expect that we have a common context. So people do that all the time. That's why a lot of times when we meet each other, we start off with, what do you do? Because if I do something similar, we already have a shared context. So you can imagine computers and agents doing something similar. Yeah, in the back?
Another suggestion is adjust your sampling parameters. So there's a number of different sampling parameters that are fed in by default. But like within mine, I've got the temperature set low so that it doesn't use flowery, spicy language. Also, for certain things, set the max token length so that it can only generate so many tokens at once.
Mm-hmm.
Prioritize short, non-flowery kind of language.
Right.
Then you have your presence penalty, your top K, top P, all those kind of things. But if you ask like ChatGPT, for example, what its current settings are, it'll tell you what they're set at, and you can modify those how you want. So I've got them in my own section so that it's always limited to this unless I say otherwise. So
Yeah.
that's one way I get around it.
Cool. So the comment was, and I'm sorry I have to repeat this because we don't have a mic around the room and for the recording later. One of the other statements was that you can set things like max token usage. There's a concept called temperature, which is very fun if you want to play around with that. As in, tell me the same thing every time or use your imagination type thing. That's kind of the flag I use, I think of that way. As well as there's a lot of settings that you can pass along to the LLM to actually constrain or instruct it to do things in a different way. Anything else? How am I doing? Yeah.
Suggestion, if you're uploading a document, you're trying to do like, I don't know, summarize something that's coming out of it. It's a lot of data, and you want to ask it additional questions. I've learned that if you reload it in a different prompt, it uses less tokens than if you stay in the same prompt and ask multiple questions. So by starting another chat or whatnot, and ask it separately with the new document reloaded back into it, you're actually removing less tokens in some cases. So that's just something as you're learning to use your tokens, kind of look at, is it going to cost me more to do it this way or that way? And as you add to it, you start to realize how many tokens you need.
Yeah, one thing, the way I would put that is sometimes a reset is good.
Yes.
Clearing out what was there before, starting again. Sometimes the context or the memory that some of the chat stuff has can be annoying sometimes. It's like, no, I'm not on that subject. I told you to not go that route, and you keep wanting to go there and stuff, and then it's like, okay, no. new chat, you know, and then copy the parts that I really wanted to care about over. How am I doing on time, by the way? I don't think I have.
30 minutes.
30 minutes to left? Let's get going then. Okay. Fun times. So out of that. So I have a, that's collab. Let me jump. So that's credits. Let me go look. So first off, we'll do this. And first thing is, Jack has volunteered to be the person to reply to your email. So if you would like to get the not super secret keys that we're using here, send an email to jackbfrancis@gmail.com, and he will reply with the tokens and stuff you'll need.
And Jay, do you want the GitHub tokens sent out as well?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure.
Yep, that is everything in there is pure public, and will be deleted probably at lunch. So don't worry about all the things. Before I go there, so jackbfrancis@gmail.com. One of the things we do at Huntsville AI is nearly everything we do is public. I won't open the presentations. Goes back to 2018. So if you've been wondering what we were doing in 2020 during COVID in March or whatever, it's there. The repository we are in is B. B as in boy. So Agent Playground, we will jump into, there's a folder called Notebooks, and in here there's one called Custom Tools. If you load the Custom Tools, and then there's a button at the top that says Open in Colab, which if you have a Google account will throw you right into a thing that you can actually run. This is the approach we normally use, especially if I'm talking to college or high school kids and I need everybody in the same kind of a sandbox. Because we are developers and we like our settings and we like to change things and test things and break things, which is great unless you're trying to get 20 kids in the same kind of a thing. So what we're going to do initially is using an agent approach from Pydantic. First off, I'm going to create a model. Then the model is the thing that ties back to your LLM. I'm going to wrap that with an agent that puts the Pydantic stuff around the agent kind of framework around the LLM. If you're using the OpenAI piece, it's very similar. You load it up with which model you want to use and then wrap it around with the agent that actually think of it as a way, it's got an LLM that does things, but this wrapper code knows how to tie that with tools and other kinds of things. So this one is basically a very dumb agent, but shows you how to do kind of custom tools. If you're looking at attaching tools with an agent, you've got a couple of different approaches. One of them is using MCP. There's another that is actually, you can write your own tools. And this is something a lot of people are doing kind of, especially if you have a one-off thing. If you have your custom database that your stuff is in, and let's say in this town you may have your custom data set that's in a place that nobody else can get to. So the internet is not going to help you. So if you needed to write your own kind of a thing that ties in with your agent that knows how to access your data that's in this structure, that you have to have this kind of access to get there, this is something you would wind up doing. Starting off, we'll do an initial, and again, not authored by Google. Yes, run it anyway. It's going to load up and do some initial installs. And this is also where things get fun. We're used to this at Huntsville AI because half the time we're working on stuff that is in progress, as in, hey, this is what I'm working right now. Anybody else? So it's a great place to go if you need somebody to help you fix your code. His name is Ben. Shout out on the video. If he watches this later, he will know exactly who I'm talking about. So we'll let that roll. That's going to install the Pydantic pieces. I should have done this already, but yes. You'll see where from Pydantic AI, I'm pulling in an agent, a run context, and then a couple of different structures from there called a document URL and an image URL. And then I'm pulling in the OpenAI chat model this is because I'm going to use a, gosh, what am I using? GPT-4o Mini, I believe, which we'll get down there in a minute. And I'm also using this open router provider, which is kind of what we talked about earlier, gives you access to using pretty much whichever kind of model that you want to use. So otherwise, if I wanted to switch between Anthropic and OpenAI, I've got all my different accounts. One thing you'll find is that some models are better at things than others. I mean, go figure. Sometimes we run into things where, hey, this didn't quite work like I was thinking. Well, let me go try it on a different model and see if maybe that's just the issue. The other interesting part is these things are moving so fast that if it's not working with the model that you're on, give it a minute and wait. There'll be another version of that model that'll drop. Let me go ahead and do my imports. This Colab import user data. If you are working with the secret stuff, you'll see this key over here. And it'll pop up, and you can actually enter the values that are in the email into here, because these will be used later. But back to, so in this case, I'm going to define a class called user, which from Pydantic mode, they provide this base model. It's saved me a lot of time, because if I'm using Pydantic base model things, converting to JSON, reading from JSON, doing a lot of things with them, I don't have to write a lot of extra boilerplate code, especially for instances of data. The one thing, if you want to break something, take a data class and then start putting operations on it. That's just, anyway, I'll leave that alone. I'm sure there are probably architects that disagree. So there was my user. I have a name and an age. And then what I'm going to do here's where I'm telling OpenRouter to use GPT-4o Mini. The reason I'm using that model is it will do anything I'm asking at a small, low level, and it is super, super, super cheap. We're talking about pennies every time I run this thing. So I'm giving it my OpenRouter key. So for here, I'm actually going to create, this is my model. So in other words, if I had a model that works with OpenAI, I would have one of those. If I had a different model that works with Gemini, I could use one of those. And then so that goes, and then I'm going to create the agent by passing it the model, which, again, the weird part really is that we have a whole conference here on agents, and then we just made one in about 20 lines of code in 30 seconds. You know, so you get around the center part of making an agent and attaching some tools is not super, super complicated. It's all of the edge cases and all of the other things. You start stacking these things on top of each other where it gets weird. In this case, we have our own tools that we're gonna create. Pydantic provides a way. So my agent was named agent. So down here, if I do an @agent and then tool plane, it's a decorator that tells it to take this tool, turn it into a tool, and associate it with that agent. And it is, right now, these tools are simple enough that it's very obvious what the tool is for. So in other words, if I ask the agent to get me a user, I don't really have to worry about it going and finding a company logo. You know, those two things are so far apart. If I were having some things where it might be a little interesting, I would actually put like a doc string underneath this method to give it more information about what this tool is for, or if it has certain constraints, things like that. So our first tool is just going to return the time. The second one is going to return a user. You could return a list of users if you want. The next one is going to get the company logo. And the other was just going to get a dummy document from the internet. So let me go ahead and run that and register those. Now it's time to actually run the thing. And this is where we all hope things work, being a live demo. And it's currently 5:22 p.m. Anybody know time zones? Yes. It's actually correct. What is the username? It's going to go, and I've also got some parameters in here, which when the tool is called, I've actually got a print statement that lets me know the tool is called. Things like that. Here's a fun one. What's the name in the company logo? So my tool just returns an image URL. Did that open somewhere new? Which is an image. So that's what I asked it was, what was the name in the image logo? So this thing went and used the tool to actually pull the logo, and then use the model itself to take that image, look at the words that were in the image, figure out which one of those words was the company name, and then give that back to me. So again, that's just in about 5 lines of code, you know. And it's really interesting. Some of the things that back in the day, aka last year, were really, really hard to do that now, I mean, we just tie the stuff together and it goes and it does it. This one, what's the main content of the document? It's a dummy file. Feel free to ask. Let's see. Agent run result. Oh, okay. Usage. This is the one I was talking about where you can actually get more information back about how many tokens went across, things like that. And then again, if you're using, hoping I didn't break something. We'll see. I might have to kill it. The other fun thing about live demos is trying to figure out what to talk about while these things are running. If it's taken a long time, we'll let that roll for a minute. I'll keep scrolling down, and we'll cover some other things.
Can you check your token usage now? Good time?
Now would be a good time. I'm still at $20.54. Let me go see what I've. And this is always fun playing around live. API keys. An hour ago. I have used 0.002 cents so far. I'm not even sure if that's going to register to show up. Yeah, my average is less than a penny so far. We'll cover a little more in a bit. I don't know if that actually completed up here. Oh, there it was. Okay. So my input tokens was 387, output tokens was 58. In this case, I'm going to do a player name that's going to reply. It's just going to reply with a Harry. What I'm doing here, so as part of defining these tools, you can either do a simple tool that just does one thing. In other words, I don't need to know anything about the run context. You know, we mentioned the context earlier with things being back and forth and back and forth. So if I were writing a tool that needed to know the answer of something that happened beforehand, this is how you would get access to that from the context. You can actually get things like system prompt, the initial prompt that was rolling in, and that did not work. Did I run that twice by chance, or was that just? Oh, okay. Yeah, it doesn't like it if you try to give it the same tool with the same name twice. So in this case, it returns my output, but it shows me in the middle of that tool call, I grab the run context, and I'm basically dumping it out so you can get an idea of what this looks like. You can see the actual request, player's name, some timestamp info, a lot of interesting stuff. A run ID if you need that later. Back to the model context, I can see what tool was called, a tool called ID. If you have the same tool getting called a bunch of times, it's useful to know which time was it when it went off the rails. Things like that. So we will, and that was towards the end of that. Time check.
15 minutes.
15 minutes, okay. One of the ones I definitely wanted to cover that does a little more interesting things. So let me go all the way back to this notebook. Yeah, I don't care if it's saved. One that I built was called GitHub Issues Agent. This one actually uses an MCP. So I'm using an MCP server provided by GitHub. And again, let me go ahead and, yes, not authored by Google. Yeah, I've been doing this a long time. I don't know that I've ever actually run a notebook that was authored by Google. Anyway, fun fact. Seems like a needless prompt. Unless they just author a lot of notebooks that nobody uses or something. But anyway. What this one's going to do is show how to take an MCP tool and associate that. Instead of our little custom tools, toy tools that we built, this one actually has access to GitHub. So I gave it a token where it can get to any public repo that is in my Huntsville AI organization. So what we're going to do is, let me go ahead and set this up. We've already seen a lot of this, so I can just get it up to run. So the classes I set up were one that's basically a wrapper around a GitHub issue that just contains the information I care about from the issue. And then I've got an issue report that's got the repository, who owns the repository, a summary of what it found, an error message in case it failed, and then a list of the other issues. Let's see if I am up. Okay, so we're ready to go with that. The configuration of the model is the same. The interesting part here is that I've got an internal variable, or I got a variable, whatever it is you want to call it. In this case, there's an MCP server provided by GitHub itself. Here's the URL to go to GitHub. And of course, they had to put Copilot in the name because everything's Copilot these days. I guess we're the pilots. So it's going to create the model. It's going to grab the token. It's going to register this tool set, and it has to pass the GitHub token over to GitHub to authorize me to use it. You can imagine, and I know there will be other discussions coming after this workshop. So every time I use a tool, not every time, but most of the time when I use a tool, there's something about me that I need that tool to know. I need this agent to know. Same thing with your travel agent. It needs to, or especially if you've got like an administrative assistant or somebody helping schedule your work day. It needs to know a lot about your preferences. It needs to know, it may need your credit card information. It may need some authorization to access some piece of data. So you can imagine with the number of agents that are out there and how many of them are carrying around interesting information that provides access to certain things, or has, there's a whole field for how to work with that, and we're not going to cover it in 15 minutes. System prompt. This one actually has a system prompt. I'm telling it that you're a specialized GitHub issues agent. You must use the tool I give you. Initial action, try to understand the user request to make sure you can fulfill it. Gather more context if you need to. Use the most precise tool available. Again, they're similar to what I was talking about earlier, where if you had access to my inbox, you could probably figure out my calendar because of all the other traffic. This is telling it to use the right tool for the job. Exit strategy. So success, what to do if you failed. Output requirement. You have to provide a clear response, accuracy, and relevance, things like that. But again, back into more prompt engineering, these things can get pages and pages worth if you're trying to do something that's super specific or fancy. So this is where we're going to initialize the agent. This time I'm actually telling it, here's the structure I want this information back in. I don't want a string. I don't want a JSON formatted message. I don't want, put it in this and give it back to me. And then I'm giving it my system prompt. So that's set up. My user prompt that I'm asking it for, which this is kind of a toy project in a notebook, but if you were building an application, this might be coming directly from a user. Another thing to think about is your user prompt could actually be coming from another agent at some point. So right now we've been building these things thinking they're talking to people, but if I've built agents that are managed by other agents, you can imagine how complex some of that can get. So I'm telling it, find all the issues related to the current project, which is Agent Playground. Report the 5 recently updated ones, their title, URL description, current status. So that's my user prompt. Actually going through and running the thing. I don't have Logfire set up. We'll look at that in just a second, time permitting. So it's off and running, looking at GitHub completed. It found 5 most updated issues. Which it's kind of cheating in that it's using what I asked it to do as the summary. It didn't actually summarize these things. If you were to actually go look at my GitHub repo, these are the ones that I have closed lately. Let's see, this one was today, I believe, for adding workshop material for today. So you can imagine if you needed to go out and do something else. Let's say I wanted to take something, find any issues that were closed, go find the related changes somewhere else and build up some type of a summary based on that. You can see where this kind of leads. So in the interest of time, I'm going to jump over to another one that I could not get working in a notebook. So in this case, and this is more, I'll close out, well actually, I use a thing called Klein because it's open source and I like it. You'll actually see the context up here as far as the model I've picked. Right now I'm using OpenRouter Mistral, I'm using Devstral as a model to go do some things. You can kind of see, and think of this as an agent inside my IDE that I'm actually asking it to go do things. You don't want to see the system prompt for this. It's gigantic. Again, and this actually gives me a running total of how much stuff costs. So that's nice for me. What I wanted to run, let's see, and hope that this works. GitHub issues, let's go to, so let me close this out over there. One of the ones that's in the repo, you can look at it as you want. I'm going to Python. Anybody else have trouble typing when people are watching? SBIR review agent. We're going to let this kind of roll. It's going to get going. with Pydantic, there's also a thing called Logfire that you can use. I still haven't crossed the free account thing as far as what you can log into this. The concept is open telemetry. So as tools are getting called, as responses come back, as an agent is working through its steps and doing all of this kind of stuff, you can imagine how hard that is to troubleshoot. This thing is actually showing me live what is going on with this agent that's running. I can actually see it's loaded up the Playwright browser. Let me drop into here. So I'm currently have a tool set up for an MCP called Playwright. This is a tool that's used a lot in automated testing for websites and things. In this case, I have it pointed at, let me go find the actual, this did not work. It worked earlier. I'll try it again. Let's see. Because I'd hate to end a session on a demo that did not work. But to show you the kind of thing that we are trying to get into, let me go find the site. Yes, leave the site, please. I attempted to put it into a notebook. The MCP server that I'm using for this actually uses standard I/O input. So it basically spins up another process and gives me the input back on my standard in. Does not work really well in a collab setting. But before that, I just want to go way down here because I can't remember the name of the site. There it is. Okay. Let me go add a new tab. If this doesn't work, I know what the problem was. It is really hard. Yeah, it says it did it, and it didn't. That's okay. It's really hard to scrape a website that is not live. Oh, shoot. Anyway, also a common problem if you've ever tried to deal with SIBRS topics. Lately, yes. I'll just explain to you this website that used to be there. It's very dynamic, gives you a list of topics in one scroll bar. And to know what's in a topic, you actually have to click the topic, it expands, then you can read the material out of the topic. To get to the next topic, you have to close that one and go click the next one and open that one, then you can read the material out of that. You can imagine how hard that is to automate from a, if you just went and read the text with WebSoup or Beautiful Soup or something like that, you're not going to get there. I wish I had picked something better for a, man.
If you are interested in the Playwright MCP, we're using that in the next session.
Yeah.
Too, for feature development instead of just testing. We'll use it for testing too. But if that's something you want to see, join us this afternoon.
Which session is that?
It's prompts to process in this room.
I think we should do the thing where the person that presented the last workshop has to introduce the person. Maybe that'll work. We could just kind of pass it on. So let me jump back.
Jay, just heads up, it is 11:40.
Do what?
You need to wrap up. We're at time.
Okay, at time.
Yeah.
So if you have questions, I will be around. People have been saying all week, but I will not be here Friday. So there's that. Yeah, so thanks everybody for coming. This has been interesting. And thanks.